Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about optimizing the data analytics practice in the enterprise, including the role of high-speed data storage in boosting analytics practice. To discuss that, I'm joined by an industry expert. With me is Justin Emerson, Principal Product Manager and Technical Evangelist for Pure Storage. Justin, happy Friday to you, and very good to have you with us today.
Happy Friday. Thanks for having me, James. Really appreciate it.
So data analytics are more important than ever before. Companies can no longer run their business on gut instinct anymore, and yet still companies are struggling in terms of getting the most from their analytics practice. What's a major challenge that companies face with data analytics in your view? And for all the effort and expense, what still holds companies back?
Well, I think what's interesting is that when we talk about analytics, oftentimes that first word that you said, data, gets dropped off of it. And it used to be that we talked about this in the context of big data, which sort of put the data out front there and kind of talked about it's about the data. And now we're talking a lot more in general about the process of analyzing and what tools are we using to do the analysis and how we're starting to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to do the analysis or various things like that. But really, at the end of the day, all of that is based around data. And so in the context of analytics, whether it's about observability or about diagnosability or about security or all of these other things, right? Really, it comes down to collecting good data and making that datable accessible. And one of the challenges that customers have found is that ever since we've all read that, that old cover of Data is the New Oil, we've been just sort of collecting everything like hoarders. But we've never really had good processes to do stuff with all of that data. And so we've ended up with data that either we don't have indexed or don't have cataloged, or data that is in lots of different places and are in different silos. And so I think one of the biggest challenges around data analytics today is understanding the scope of all of that data, about data governance and about understanding what you have and then being able to actually do things effectively on that. It's almost a bigger challenge to know what you have before you can even get to well, what can I do with it?
Yeah, I think it's amazing for companies, and I think the analytics practices have sort of grown up pell-mell, but there are a lot of buckets and silos, and we've got something in the Tulsa office, we've got something in the Topeka office, different formats. Sometimes I wonder, with all that spread out data, how companies get anything done.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that because the problems that a lot of these analytics programs have run into is that a lot of them have started to undertake. Early on, they all sort of decided that we need to sort of manage storage ourselves because the storage problems that we're dealing with, the data problems we're dealing with, are so large that most of the other organs within the organization are not capable of handling them. And so a lot of what the development around big data and then analytics has been around is just collecting and managing data. And that has sort of happened as a complete separate silo or a complete separate configuration versus what standard IT might have been doing. So what you end up with is analytics packages or pipelines, et cetera, that are totally siloed off from maybe the central storage or central data repository or the data strategy that an organization has. And then if you have multiples of these packages, maybe something like a message bus, then putting into an analytics or a log analytics tool, and these things chained together, each of them may have its own storage silo because each of those packages has grown up with its own storage backend because they were developed in a time where they could not rely on a shared storage service to be able to deliver the kind of scale and the kind of performance that they needed. So the time in which all of these tools have evolved has sort of exacerbated that problem of data silos.
So that's the problem, and clearly there's a number of problems there. How can companies solve these kind of issues? Is there industry momentum toward any solutions?
Yeah, so I think what's a little bit funny is that we're rediscovering the same lessons that we've learned again and again every decade of IT, which is, I like to say that things happen very cyclic, in a very cyclical way. Like we go from, well, let's centralize everything to now let's distribute everything. Now let's centralize everything. It was like VDI was just time sharing on mainframes, just removed by 30 years. We go from parallel buses to serial buses, and then back to parallel buses, then back to serial buses. And
of course, cloud itself helped, move data all over the place.
Absolutely, right? Cloud is just, centralizing it on somebody else's computer. And so I think that, this storage has gone through this same thing over and over again, which is, we bring storage together, and then, as one example, we're gonna break it apart and distribute it out because we're doing so much and we need all this, data close to where it's being analyzed. And I think we've started over the last 5 years to hit that sort of cycle going back the other direction, which is that one of the big trends is that in these kinds of processes, we're starting to see a reconvergence of storage. And so whereas many of these packages would have in the past been focused on, okay, now I'm going to distribute my storage out to all of my nodes that are doing the processing, we're starting to see a re-centralization of all of that storage. And so that carries with it huge benefits, which again, everyone has already figured out years ago in different contexts. But because of the scope of it, it sort of necessitated this, well, we can't do everything in one place anymore. Let's distribute it out, right? We can't put everybody on the mainframe. Let's put a PC on everybody's desk. That trend has really accelerated with what you brought up, the cloud. Because as people say move some of these workloads into the cloud, it becomes really, really financially advantageous to centralize storage, because that means you're using less of it, and therefore you're paying your cloud provider less money per month. And so that's highly incentivized some of these packages to evolve in ways that can leverage centralized storage. And that work and that evolution is now feeding back into on-prem infrastructures as well. And so I think one of those big solving trends is bringing storage back together, which not only helps to make it more cost effective, but also break down those silos that we were talking about, which is now I can have different stages of that pipeline accessing the same data instead of each of them keeping a discrete copy of it.
Okay, makes sense. Well, let's drill down to the Pure Storage solutions. I mean, how does Pure Storage support the analytics practices of its clients? I mean, what's the advantage of Pure Storage?
Right. Well, so Pure is an enterprise and cloud storage company, and we have lots of different solutions for customers across all sorts of different verticals and applications. But in the context of analytics, right, one of our biggest strengths is that we can provide a highly scalable, all-flash, unstructured data platform, which customers can leverage for many, many different applications, not just within the analytics space, but with others. But in the context of analytics, we can offer, highly performant, highly scalable storage over, whether it's a file protocol or whether it's an object protocol. And that's important because a lot of applications are in the middle of an evolution going from one to the other. So you may see people using file storage for certain parts of their workflow, using object storage for others, but over time, some of these are going to move more towards object. And so having a really flexible storage platform that can do all of those things is really important, because it doesn't lock a customer into a particular methodology or particular architecture. It gives them the flexibility to do that. And as you bring all of these different tools together to run on some kind of centralized storage, the scalability and the performance of that storage becomes enormously important, because you don't want to, you want it to grow with its capacity and performance along with your business. And if your business is growing, in an ideal world, that means you're being more successful. You're probably collecting more data. You want to do more analysis. You want to be more effective with that analysis and bring on new and more interesting tools. And those may require even more performance. One of those reasons that people spread all that storage out to the edge in the beginning was that the centralized storage repositories that they could have leveraged would have crumbled under the weight of all of the data and all of the performance that data required in order to do the kinds of processing that we're talking about. So Pure, being an all-flash storage company, we do flash better than anybody else, in my humble opinion. And that means that we can build really, really intelligent, really, really scalable platforms for these analytics tools. And almost just as important, they're easy to manage. And for these applications where the storage management has, for the recent past, been a burden on the application team because they've not been able to rely on a centralized storage provider. For them, who are generally speaking not natively storage people, having a complicated storage engine that they have to manage is probably very low on their list of priorities.
Sure.
So having something that just sort of works invisibly to support their workloads is super important.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say really is if you're going to gather your data all in one place, you definitely need to be supporting that with a storage system that can really handle that.
Absolutely, and one that doesn't just handle it on day one, but can handle it on into the future, be evolvable, be scalable, continually improve over time. And that's something that we really pride ourselves on, delivering storage platforms that get better as they age, not are obsolete when you take them out of the box.
There's one other, I think, very important topic that's related. It's ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And how does that relate with the issue of data storage, with the shift from hard disk to flash? What are the implications for issues like power use and sustainability?
That's an absolutely great question, and it's top of mind for so many different people. It tends to vary from geography to geography. Like we find this is a much more, I mean, it's like a board level issue in many companies, and say, for example, in EMEA, but just more broadly in general, ESG and sustainability are becoming higher and bigger and bigger priorities for companies. And I believe the statistic is something like 2% of energy consumption globally is consumed by data centers. So that's a non-trivial number.
Right.
And our estimates are that storage is something like maybe 0.5%. So it's about a quarter of that overall power or energy consumption. So as companies store more and more data, as companies process more and more data, as analytics tends to feed more and more in, it behooves us to really focus on how do we do that efficiently, how do we do that sustainably, not only for business reasons, but also for social and ethical ones. So
go ahead, please. Yes.
Yeah. So hard disks, are a technology that have been around long before I was born, and they have done a very good job of being the sort of primary online storage mechanism for over 50 years. So it really behooves us to think about how do we do this sustainably. And hard drives have been around since long before I was born, but they've done a very good job in the last 50 years of being the primary online storage medium for organizations. But flash is just fundamentally so much better. The only reason that companies have not moved every single bit of data over to flash has been cost. And so one of the big advantages of our approach to doing flash is that we are able to deliver solutions that are so much more power efficient and cost effective than other solutions in the market, that we're now looking at how do we replace disk across the board in organizations. And when we talk about analytics, there's so much data. Being able to make a dent in the sustainability and the efficiency of that data platform can really move the needle for organizations. I was just at another company earlier this week talking to them about one of their solutions, and they could save millions of dollars in power over the next 10 years just by moving some of their workloads from disk to flash. So even from a dollars and cents standpoint, it makes sense, but also from a environmentalism and an ethical standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. On top of which, flash is just a better medium for these analytics workloads. So many of them require the kinds of I/O and the kinds of random performance that disk does a very poor job of providing. And so flash is just better across the board. And as I said earlier, I think we do flash better than anybody else, but I'm biased. So I think that if we think about when we're talking about analytics, we're talking about any really large, impactful source of data. Every organization should be thinking about how do I do that efficiently? How do I do that sustainably? And Pure is in the vanguard of companies in our space talking about how our solutions impact that. So we released a whole ESG report about a month ago, where we showed all of the benefits of our solutions compared to others, both all flash solutions and disk solutions, and what a difference that can make for organizations in terms of sustainability. So I really do hope that more people are examining those things when they're making buying decisions or when they're making architectural decisions, because if it can make a dent in overall global energy consumption, I think that's just a win for everybody across the board.
So flash is good for business. It's also good for the planet. That's a great combination. It seems like then that an all flash platform is essentially inevitable in the enterprise at some point in time.
Absolutely. In fact, our CEO at our Accelerate conference said that we think that there will be no more hard drives being sold by 2028, which is a pretty, I like to call it a hot take. It's a pretty bold statement. I'm sure that there are some people who would disagree. But I think we are very confident in that, like many technology transitions before, right? That we're not using 8 tracks, and we're not using I would say vinyl, but that's not, it's made a comeback, so you got to be careful about your metaphors.
Right.
But we're not using the horse and carriage anymore for daily transportation. And I think that by the end of the decade, we're definitely not going to be using spinning magnetic platters for our storage anymore. There's just a fundamentally better way to do that. And the economics for that aren't being driven by the data center. They're being driven by all of the devices in our pockets, all of the devices in our, all of the electronics in our cars and our televisions and everything like that. So I think the arc of history is sort of bending in that direction inevitably.
Clearly. Justin, I think you said it, a lot of good stuff. I certainly learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today, and please come back and talk with us again sometime.
James, it'd be my pleasure. Thank you so much. Been great. Been great being on.